Welcome to the Cross in the Desert, speaking hope and freedom to Iran. I'm your host, Randy L. Noble, and I really thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on the Cross in the Desert. I'm really excited about book number 8. This is my newest book entitled Chasing After Rainbows, Stories of the Revolution. And what I want to do on this broadcast is talk to you about my new book and discuss with you many of the interesting themes that caused me to write this new book, Chasing After Rainbows. Really, the underlining theme of this book is posed to you as a watcher, a viewer, a question. The theme of this book is in the form of a question. And here's the question. How far would you be willing to go to save your best friend? Think about it. There are two main characters in my book, Sahar and Shabnam. Both of these characters are young Iranian girls who grew up during the time of the Iranian Revolution. And actually, the characters of Sahar and Shabnam are based on two of my dearest friends in real life, Shabnam Asadali and Shadi Paveh. It was about, I guess almost 10 months ago that Shadi was on my Cross in the Desert radio program, and she shared with me the story of being a young girl growing up in Nairavan, a very wealthy neighborhood outside of Tehran. And this was right before the Iranian Revolution. Her father was a general in the Shah's army. They lived in a very wealthy neighborhood. She shared the very painful experience that when the Ayatollah Khomeini took power in 1979, that her father was later arrested and executed by him. When I heard Shadi's story, I knew as a writer I had to say something about this. And so my book, Chasing After Rainbows, is dedicated to Shadi. And it's based loosely about her young childhood growing up in Iran before and during the Iranian Revolution. Now, my other friend, Shabnam Asadali, also grew up during the Iranian Revolution. In fact, both Shadi and Shabnam are very prominent human rights activists living in Canada. Now, Shabnam spoke out about the changes after the revolution, about the requirement for women to have to go to school and learn the Quran and have to wear dark clothing and hijabs. And as a result, she was arrested as a young teenager at 16, and she spent 18 grueling months in Evin prison. There were consequences to her speaking out, because when the Shah left and Khomeini came, true freedom died that day. So my new book is based on two very dear friends, and I want to talk to you about those themes. It is, of course, built around the Iranian Revolution. Now, the question I posed was, how far would you be willing to go to rescue your best friend? Well, here's the subplot. Sahar is a human rights activist living in California in the present day. And one day she's shocked to find out that her best friend from 35 years ago, Shabnam, is on death row. And she's going to be executed because she became a Christian and was distributing Bibles. And so the book really talks about Sahar's dedication as a lawyer and a human rights activist to do everything she can to rescue her best friend who's on death row in Iran. I won't go into all of the other details. That would take away a lot of the storyline, and I want you to discover it as you read it. I've probably already said too much. But I mentioned that it's built around the Iranian Revolution. This is a very intense friendship, a very intimate friendship between Sahar and Shabnam in the book. Well, let's take a look at some of the pictures surrounding the Iranian Revolution. This is a picture of the Shah of Iran. And the Shah of Iran had some very positive things to contribute to Iran. He, of course, succeeded his father in 1941. Among the many things he brought to Iran, besides a great military, was that he gave the right for women to vote. And the clergy was not too real happy about that. And maybe this was some of the beginnings of the rumblings that the Shah was out of touch. One of the complaints against the Shah was that he was too tied to the United States, too dependent upon Western culture, and Iranians felt that Western culture was corrupting Islam in Iran, was corrupting their whole societal structure. He was too close with the United States, and that as the Shah, he was also distinct from the rich to the poor class. He wasn't helping enough of the poor, struggling Iranians. And so the charge of being too secular, too westernized, really was the impetus to bring about a change in leadership. And of course, that was the Ayatollah Khomeini. And of course, on February 1st, 1979, everything changed in Iran. When the Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile in Paris, that's when the death of freedom took place in Iran. One of the pivotal events leading up to the bloody revolution was Black Friday, September 8th, 1979. The militia was now having to deal with thousands and millions of protesters. Things were getting very, very violent. And on that day, I believe 88 protesters sadly were killed in the violence. But the media in Iran and around the world tried to say that there was thousands killed. And so you saw protesters carrying signs, and in my book I have a scene where Shabnam and Sahar are in a limousine going home after shopping in the Tehran Bazaar, and protesters attack them, these young 12-year-old girls in the car, and they're frightened to death. And I describe the scene of the protesters banging and beating and smashing the limousine windows of the car they're riding in. And you see signs all over Iran. The Shah is the U.S. puppet. Down with the Shah. Death to the Shah. You see these signs and protests that I describe in my book, Chasing After Rainbows. Now, one of the big changes that happened as the result of the revolution was the changes to women's rights. Under the Shah, the hijab was banned. Women were not allowed to wear it. But under Khomeini, it was now a requirement of the government of Allah, the new Islamic Republic. Women had to have hijab on, be dressed in dark clothing, wear a chador. And you can see in this photograph, women are marching to the tune of a new leader, gladly wearing the hijab, it seems, and the chador, carrying signs and pictures, celebrating the new leader. Millions of Iranians were deceived and told that there was this new democracy coming, a better leader who would right the wrong of all the Shah's injustices. And clearly that didn't happen. Freedom died when Khomeini arrived. You can see here at the crowd of protesters this huge, huge picture of the Ayatollah Khomeini. And on February 1st, 1979, you see him stepping off the jumbo jet from Paris, landing in Tehran, and everything changed for Iranians on that day. You see here Khomeini at a speech in the graveyard of Tehran on February 1st, 1979. He's saying, "I will decide the government, a government for the people." Well, clearly, the rule of the Ayatollahs had arrived. Mullahs, clerics were now interpreting law. Everything changed. It was now gone from a secular, westernized government to a fundamentalist Islamic government, the Islamic Republic. Now, if you lived in Iran, you became a slave of the government of Allah, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so this is the theme of my new book, Chasing After Rainbows. What I want to do right now is spend these last couple of minutes quoting from my book for you, specifically talking to you about my two dear friends whom this book is dedicated to. And then I want to read the preface. But this is what I wrote for my dear friend Shadi, whom this book is dedicated to. To Shadi, your dedication to writing and speaking out for the desperate plight of political prisoners in Iran is so inspiring to me, Shadi. You are a woman of great passion and courage. You are a powerful voice for the voiceless. I am honored to use the actual events of your childhood in Iran as the basis for the first half of my book. I pray that my story will bring healing and hope for all that you have suffered. To Shabnam, your frightening experience in Evin prison during the revolution has transformed you into a champion for human rights, Shabnam. You understand firsthand what life is like under a bloody dictatorship. Today, Canada is a much safer place because of your devotion to exposing the tactics of the Iranian regime as they try to infiltrate into society. I am honored to be your friend. And now I would like to read to you the preface of my new book, Chasing After Rainbows. It's been 35 years since Ayatollah Khomeini stepped off the jumbo jet from Paris and was greeted by millions of Iranians as the leader of a new Islamic state. A new age had finally dawned in Iran. The secular government of Iran had now become the glorious government of Allah. After months of rioting and protesting, which finally resulted in the ousting of the Shah, Iranians were now convinced that their country would be transformed into a new republic of true justice and freedom. However, 35 years later, under the rule of mullahs, Islamic clerics, and an aging supreme leader, Iran is anything but a republic of true justice and freedom. Instead, it has become a culture of death that imprisons and executes anyone who would dare speak out and disagree. Be our voice of freedom. Please help us. We are prisoners here. Those were the exact words my dear Iranian friend who lives in Shiraz said to me during a video chat. I asked her what I should tell my customers at my upcoming book signing, and she responded, pleading with me to tell them to, quote, be our voice for freedom. I have another Iranian friend who lives in Mashhad who shared with me a frightening experience she recently had at a university where she works part-time as an English teacher. One day she was summoned into the office of the discipline committee and interrogated. They asked her if she had become a Christian. My friend denied the accusation, and then they promptly demanded her to hand over her laptop computer to them. Finally, my dear friend in Tehran described to me in an email what daily life was like for an Iranian woman under the Islamic Republic. Every day, she explained, the Ghast Yershad, the morality police, patrols the streets searching for violators of the Islamic dress code. If a woman does not wear her hijab properly, if she is showing too much skin or wearing too much makeup, she can be fined and arrested. What has changed in 35 years? Well, where is the promise of a glorious new Iran with true justice and freedom? Since the new president, Hassan Rouhani, took office in 2013, executions have tripled. Political prisoners are being silently executed by being denied medical intervention. Journalists, bloggers, and lawyers fill the cells of Evin prison. Christians like my dear friend Saeed Abedini are being tortured and held hostage, refusing to change their religion and return to Islam. Where is religious freedom? Where is freedom of speech and assembly? It is nowhere to be found in the Islamic Republic of Iran. My dear friend Shabnam, growing up as a young teenager in Tehran, was shocked to discover that speaking her mind could have grave consequences. Quote, she says, I did not think that a simple conversation, having an opinion and simply expressing it, would put my life in danger. In 1981, for 18 grueling months, Shabnam suffered in Evin prison. She recalls the frightening experience of counting 60 to 70 gunshots at night and realizing that these gunshots represented executions that were taking place. My other dear friend Shadi remembers the painful experience of saying goodbye to her father at an airport in Tehran. Shadi's father, a general under the Shah, was later arrested and executed by Khomeini. My Iranian friends have suffered so much under the Islamic regime. It is a culture of death, fear, and oppression which has claimed the lives of so many desperate Iranians. I am writing this book to sound the alarm for an Iran awakening. For those of us like me, who lead pretty much normal and peaceful lives, we need an awakening, a wake-up call to speak out and pray for our suffering brothers and sisters. They need our voices to speak out against injustices and to stand up for their human rights. My dear friends Shabnam and Shadi have dedicated their lives to the cause of freedom and human rights. They remember where they came from, They know firsthand what life is like without freedom. I truly believe that one day there will be a free Iran. I look forward to the day when my Iranian friends can walk down the streets of Iran again without fear. I believe that after the storm, after all of the pain and suffering, that they will see the rainbow. The rainbow will arc across the sky in brilliant colors, and the beauty of Iran will finally return to its people. And thus you can understand a little bit of why I have a picture like this. And you'll discover more about the meaning of the rainbow when you read my new book, Chasing After Rainbows. I know that God hears the cries of his people. I know that he will soon paint the skies of Iran again with the beautiful rainbow. I want to close with you a particular psalm that I close with on most of my radio broadcasts. It is a prayer to God for my Iranian friends, and I want you to hear it. He will rescue the poor when they cry to him. He will help the oppressed who have no one to defend them. He feels pity for the weak and the needy, and he will rescue them. He will redeem them from oppression and violence, for their lives are precious to him. Psalm 72, verses 12 through 14. I hope that you will get a copy of my new book, Chasing After Rainbows, Stories of the Revolution. It is a book dedicated to my dear Iranian friends, a prayer for their freedom and for a new, free Iran one day. God bless you, and thank you for joining me on this edition of The Cross in the Desert. See you next week.